Story 1. My friends left me at a train station when I was 15 years old, throwing up and blacked out drunk for the first time. They thought they were being nice by taking my backpack to keep it safe while I passed out at the train station. Yep, definitely the worst friends I've had. I didn't talk to them again after they risked my life but saved my belongings. When I woke up in the hospital at 3 a.m., my family was there, scared and worried for me. The ambulance had taken me to the hospital around 4 p.m. Story 2. His name was Hassan. He was from Palestine and immigrated to the United States. He was bullied because he was Muslim. I stood up for him and defended him. By the time he was 21, he had changed significantly. He resembled a college student whose life revolved around being a womanizer. I confronted him at a bonfire after he began harassing some girls. He was bragging about drugging girls at his college, and enough was enough. We don't talk anymore. Story 3. It took 10 years to escape this situation. I entered at 15 and left at 25. It shaped my character. Everything I did or liked seemed ridiculous. Everything I dreamed of felt like nonsense. Nothing that came from me felt good. In other words, I became who she wanted me to be, as she was older and also my cousin. Music, movies, friends. She chose everything because only she knew what was right. She considered herself the most incredible person in the world and was always showing off and being selfish. I loved her and feared her at the same time. I discovered she was speaking poorly about me behind my back, and I severed contact through a lot of therapy. I had to distance myself from these people and cut off contact with everything. Story 4. She wished harm upon an infant when she was kicked out of our dance studio for something that was entirely her fault. Story 5. He was the type of person who constantly put me down to boost his ego. I considered him a friend because, as a child, I believed that everyone deserves at least one friend. I stayed around despite his behavior. He moved away in middle school and I never spoke to him again. However, I heard he is doing well, and I'm glad to hear it. Story 6. Somebody tried to end their life because of one of my former friends. I ended the friendship shortly after that incident. Story 7. She used me and then blamed me for her mistakes. She slept with my boyfriend and got pregnant around the same time. Luckily, it was her boyfriend's child. She manipulated her boyfriend as well by stopping her birth control and not informing him. Story 8. She was very controlling. She was about 5 years older than I was and would belittle me, acting like she knew everything in the world. The final straw came during the COVID-19 pandemic. I worked for a moving company. My dad had tested positive for COVID-19, and we had been around each other recently. I took a test and received a negative result. Because I wouldn't send her a picture of my entire medical document from urgent care, which included my insurance and name, she lost her mind. She called the general manager of the company and tried to get both my boss and me fired. Obviously, it didn't work in her favor, and the company thought she was unreasonable. Story 9. She came from a toxic family. Everyone backbites and slut-shames each other. She would vent for hours and cry, while I tried to calm her down. Over time, I realized she would dump all her problems on me and always portray herself as the victim at work, home, or in love. She would then go on to have a good day while I felt overwhelmed. She even started calling my best friend and mother about the same issues. Took me years to find the courage. Finally, I cut her out of my life completely and told her I needed time. After years, I feel like a free person. I got my happiness back in ways I can't explain. Recently, she sent me messages calling me a two-faced person, and I was so done that I blocked her and archived the chat into oblivion. Story 10. My ex-best friend treated me like a doormat. When I was sad, they were depressed. When my life was tough, they were struggling. I could never share my experiences without them feeling like they had it worse. My life had to revolve around them. When I returned to school, they gave me the silent treatment because I didn't want to wait or take the program they preferred. Ultimately, they told me I was no longer someone they wanted in their life after I confided in them about my struggles. I even apologized for being busy with midterms, lost school projects, and my mom and boyfriend being in and out of the hospital. They would also tell me they only prayed for the worst to happen to people, which was also troubling. Story 11. She was a master manipulative narcissist who severely mentally abused me, and I let it go on for much longer than it should have, hoping she would realize how much she was hurting me and stop. She was probably one of the worst people I've ever met, especially because to this day she still lies about everything that happened, and she is very good at it. She plays the victim so well. I have post-traumatic stress disorder from her. The abuse nearly made me end my life, and I still haven't fully healed from the trauma she inflicted on me. Story 12. There are many people whom I thought were my friends, but they prefer to keep their distance. However, I did have one friend in high school who knew I liked a girl. We were all part of the same social circle. He also talked to her and eventually started dating her. Unfortunately, he didn't inform me that they were together. I found out by overhearing others. I hear they are married now. Story 13. Her brother, a 21-year-old in law school, attempted suicide. During a family therapy session afterward, he asked her, a 25-year-old woman, to be nicer to him, but she laughed at him and told him to grow up. She recounted the story later, still laughing about it. Probably goes without saying, but she was not a nice person. Story 14. I had a friend who seemed to like a guy and was always best friends with whoever he was dating. When I started dating him, she seemed to do things to try to break us up. We eventually did break up, and it had nothing to do with her, but she made him seem unlikable and tried to make me not want him so she could. However, he didn't want anything to do with her other than being friends. After he and I split, she didn't seem to care about being friends with me. Some friend. Story 15. His rules. He had no idea that he wasn't cool or hip. His girlfriend loved my car, and both our cars were identical. Mine just didn't have a body kit. He missed out on a great friend. Story 16. She was not a friend. She was a coworker whom I mistook for a friend. Not a close friend, but a friend nonetheless. In reality, she is phony, underhanded, insidious, sneaky, dishonest, arrogant, soulless, greedy, and a true moral degenerate. Yet, I am grateful for her because she taught me valuable lessons on trust, workplace relationships, and the type of person I do not ever want to be. To my knowledge, she is still living, so hopefully, karma has some powerful and far-reaching consequences in store for her. Story 17. This is something I only figured out in hindsight. Imagine someone forcing themselves into your life and then trying to live your life for you. He was quite literally obsessed with me. He actually wanted to be me. It got to the point where he forced himself into living my life while sabotaging me at every opportunity and preventing me from doing the things I wanted to do. This went on for about a decade because even when I was fed up with him, our other friends kept him around. Story 18. He was inappropriate. When I first met him, I thought it was a one-time hookup involving an 18-year-old guy and a 15-year-old girl, so I didn't give it a second thought. Fast forward to my 21st birthday. He is 21 as well and is now dating a 14-year-old while asking me to occupy her divorced mother. That's when it dawned on me that all of his girlfriends were 14 to 15 years old, had mothers who were divorced, and lived in subsidized housing. I stopped talking to him. Fast forward to me being 45. I am at a high school football game and see that same guy talking with a 16-year-old flag girl. I thought it couldn't be the same guy and assumed it was likely his daughter. Then I saw the kiss. I told a friend who knew the girl's mother. The girl's mother came over and informed a police officer, who had him picked up. On the way home, I told my wife and friends about this man's pattern of pursuing young teenage girls with poor self-esteem. Story 19. You are crossing into relationship boundaries here, but the worst friend I ever had found drama in everything. The last time I communicated with her, she mentioned considering calling the police for a wellness check on me without any basis. I was fine and had been fine. Story 20. I had a negative experience with someone who was incredibly rude and manipulated me. I chose to cut ties with her, but 2 years later, she ended up at the same high school as me. I learned that she had been suspended a few times for vaping and was associating with questionable people. Overall, she was not a good influence. Story 21. She decided that drugs and a man were more important than our 20-year friendship. She didn't even show up when my mom died. Story 22. I have experienced physical abuse from a few individuals during elementary and middle school, including being punched, bitten, and pinched. Some were awful in other ways, such as threatening harm, being manipulative, insulting, or dismissive of my experiences. I feel like I am attracting the wrong people and wonder if I am the problem each time. I can be hypercritical at times, and I acknowledge that I may not have been a great friend to others either. Story 23. She was insincere and spoke negatively about everyone behind their backs while being friendly to their faces. She only engaged with me when I initiated the conversation. She never reached out or made an effort to see me or check on how I was doing. Her last social media post was, "The platform told me to write on your wall. You're welcome. I am so glad to have completed high school." Story 24. I was friends with a girl who attempted to seduce my sister's boyfriend. She would openly tell me about her crush on him, but would insist it was an innocent, harmless crush. I shared this with my sister, who didn't see any harm in a little crush. This friend was married, and her husband was the nicest person, working 3 jobs to support her lavish lifestyle. Months later, my sister and her boyfriend told me that this friend was sending him seductive texts. When I confronted her about it, she acted like it was no big deal. She is definitely a narcissist and ghosted me immediately after our conversation. 3 years later, this friend asked my mother-in-law if she could come to a family baby shower after not having heard from her since being ghosted. She is by far the most narcissistic friend I have ever had. Story 25. She acted like my best friend, but I found out she was relentlessly talking behind my back and making fun of me the entire time. What makes it worse is she is now a high school guidance counselor. Story 26. Once, I lost my car keys after a hike in the desert and texted her while having a breakdown about how I was going to get home. She ignored me for a few hours because she thought I needed space since I seemed stressed. Story 27. She assaulted me so much that people thought my boyfriend at the time was an abuser. Her roughhousing sometimes turned into pure bursts of violence. She was also very mentally disturbed and did some terrible things to me. I had to remove myself from the internet for 2 years so she would eventually forget I existed. I saw her for the first time in 4 years 2 weeks ago. Story 28. She was in debt. I lent her my allowance since I was still in college at that time. She ran away. I almost didn't graduate. It's not just about the money but the trust. Story 29. I connected him with a business tip. He lied and said it was worthless, but I later found out he made millions of dollars from it and did not share any profits with me. Story 30. It was very enjoyable to be around this person, who was popular and attractive, and they always provided positive reinforcement while pretending to have my best interests at heart. However, after allowing this person into my life, the cracks began to show. They gradually ruined all my relationships. They spread nasty lies about me to make themselves look better, constantly manipulated me, and instigated problems with people they disliked, using me as a pawn. In the end, I was left with no friends. This person was a true narcissist. I had never encountered one before. I was 23 years old at the time. 15 years later, I have never forgotten this life lesson. I never knew such toxic individuals existed, and some people may go through life without ever encountering them. For the rest of my life, I will be cautious of someone like this. They can ruin your life. Story 31. She was very mean to me, but I think it was just her way of talking to her friends. It was weird. My friends and I insult each other all the time in a lighthearted manner, but she was just so brutal to me. Story 32. A narcissistic, spoiled individual with sociopathic tendencies and a troubling inclination towards deriving joy from harming others' lives. We met as children, so I didn't realize she was a negative influence until nearly high school when she began engaging in troubling behavior and bullying many people. She resembled a character you might see in a film like Mean Girls, essentially combining traits of Regina George and a mob boss. She was one of the most toxic individuals I have ever encountered. Nowadays, I have no idea where she is, and to be completely honest, I don't care. She burned so many bridges with me that it's no longer amusing. Story 33. She would always kick my shins because she knew pain made me do what she wanted. We were in elementary school, and she thought she had found the cheat code. Story 34. The most narcissistic person I ever met, but I didn't judge him for it because I knew his home situation was awful. Once he let his ego down, he was actually a sensitive and interesting person. He was just incredibly insecure and used me to support himself. Not intentionally, I don't think, but still really toxic. A lot of people in my high school were kind of like that, though, and they mostly went on to get master's degrees and doctoral degrees while I've been trying to pull myself together enough to stay out of psychiatry for the last 8 years. I'm not that bitter about it, though, for some reason. Story 35. I had a friend from 4th to 8th grade. I considered her my best friend, but she was awful. She would get upset with me if I had other friends and ignore me when I didn't do anything wrong. I was more of a possession to her than a friend. One day, one of my other friends prank called me, and it scared me, so we told her mom. Her mom called the number back and was insulted by my friend. I do not know what actually transpired. This is secondhand information. Months later, she and I went to ride bikes, and I left my phone at their house. Her mom sent nasty texts to the friend who prank called me, and when I asked her why, she said it was because she was angry with me for still being friends with her after what happened. This woman had a problem with two 12-year-old girls. The last time I spoke to her, she got upset with me because she was moving to another state and wanted me to sleep over during the week on a school night, but my mom refused to let me. This happened in 2008. Every few years, the girl, whom I never think about, messages my mom on Facebook asking about me and for my phone number, but my mom never gives it to her, thank goodness. Story 36. She lied constantly. At 18 years old, she told me she had brain cancer, told another friend that she had a serious heart problem, and told yet another friend that she had another life-threatening disease, which I can't remember now. We were all a little older and concerned, so we spoke to each other and found out what she had been telling the others. She also told me that her mother would bring home random men and have sex with them on the couch in front of her, not allowing her to leave the room. I knew her mother, and that was very unlikely. I never trusted anything she said again. Story 37. I had a friend who started treating me poorly once he noticed his girlfriend was attracted to me, even though I was oblivious to it. This guy was shorter than average but compensated by excelling in various sports, while I mostly did my own thing. He enjoyed rap and hip-hop more, while I have always been a fan of metal. He didn't get into metal until he began dating a girl who shared the same taste in music. They eventually got married, but something happened between them that didn't work out. I'm not sure what, but it became obvious when they both changed their profile pictures and relationship status, and were no longer visible on each other's friend lists. He had some good qualities and could be fun to hang out with, but eventually, his self-centered nature came out, and I'm assuming that's what drove his now ex-wife away. The marriage lasted less than 2 years, which is sad since they were high school sweethearts. She was a genuinely nice person who deserved better, and I hope wherever she is doing all right. Story 38. She had mood swings every day because she has a vitamin D deficiency. She made me wait for hours before we went to college, and I missed classes because of her. Another person couldn't stop talking about her parents, who apparently had an unhappy marriage. Story 39. She had absolutely no sense of guilt for anything she ever did. She seemed to think she could do anything, and anyone who was hurt by it or tried to stop her was just an idiot or out to get her. I never once saw her apologize for anything. She lied constantly, as if she didn't believe anyone around her was smart enough to see it. I dislike making armchair diagnoses, but I would not be surprised to learn that something was seriously medically wrong with her. I won't list what she actually did because her actions are so numerous and weirdly specific that it would make her identifiable if anyone we knew saw this. But knowing her was awful. Story 40. He would start fights when he was greatly outmatched. One night it was late, and he confronted 8 people in the street. It was just him and me at that moment. They began picking up bricks and weapons from the ground. That was the last time we spent time together. Story 41. An only child, my friend came from wealthy parents. He had a privileged perspective that genuinely frustrated me. I came from a struggling family, so his aspirations and extravagances were abhorrent to me. I paid for all my cars. He totaled 4. I have worked since I was 12. He never had a job until he was 23. He thought that racing motorcycles, climbing rocks, and scuba diving would be great careers. He was fully financed and failed. He criticized his parents. Mine abandoned me. He had everything and he squandered it. It was sad to see so much potential and opportunity wasted. Story 42. Constantly mocking me with others for being gay. Scaring me by saying he would harm any guy who is with me. I have mixed feelings about what was happening. He is actually preventing me from forming good connections with other gay individuals, thinking he might bully it out of me. Story 43. She asked me to let her son stay with me until he received his first paycheck. He stole my silver and jewelry. She shrugged and said it was my fault. Story 44. She was someone who took advantage of my kindness. I helped her with things, bought her food, and even got her a job twice, but it was never really reciprocated. She would call me names in a joking manner and was often dismissive of me. This was about 15 years ago, and it would not be acceptable today, but I'm surprised I tolerated it at all. Story 45. I had a friendship for almost 20 years. I decided to end it when she made fun of something that was really hurtful to me. It was too personal and she didn't care about it. We have known each other since we were children, around 5 or 6 years old. She was always manipulative and egocentric. If I didn't do things her way or at her pace, she would ask our friends to stop talking to me until she said otherwise. Every time I had a boyfriend or someone I wanted to date, she would criticize them and make things difficult. That behavior caused me a lot of trouble. Additionally, every time she told a funny story about me, I ended up humiliated in front of our friends. She wanted to be the center of attention, and it didn't matter if the story was sad or traumatic. She would laugh as if it were a stand-up comedy routine. If I ended up crying, she would dismiss my feelings by saying things like, "Don't be stupid, just laugh." Story 46. I had a friend in high school who was quite wild. He would kick people and hit them with his oversized wallet chain. Once, he tried to strangle me while laughing, but I just shoved him into a floor lamp and walked away. Felt like a scene from a comedy, but nobody else was involved. To be fair, he was dealing with schizophrenia and was on several medications. He would do strange things like draw his own blood with a needle and fill cups with it. On my part, he always had marijuana, so I mostly tolerated his behavior as a 16-year-old. He eventually became a degreed programmer, which is great for him. Story 47. She was extremely upset because I decided to distance myself from her. She ended up having her mother come to my house and threaten my mother, and she got a restraining order against me, claiming I was the aggressor. She turned the entire year level against me, which caused me to lose all my friends. I'm still dealing with the aftereffects of what happened. Story 48. I had a group of friends and we worked on a final project together. The teacher disliked me, and I ended up doing the entire project. Everyone received a good grade except for me, so I had to retake the subject. Nobody said anything, and I was frustrated. Later, one of those friends and I went out a lot. I had a complicated history with a guy, and one night she approached him and spoke negatively about me. She tried flirting with him and even claimed she had seen all of our private conversations. He was upset and never spoke to me again. Another friend ended up being with my longtime crush. When she told me, I felt bad for her and didn't say anything, as she shared her own difficult experiences. Story 49. Keep copying my moves. I was into certain things such as art and journaling, and she did them too. It became strange when she, being the girly type, suddenly changed her fashion sense to a semi-formal office style, mainly wearing black, similar to me. I used to wear black, and because she kept copying me, I shifted my fashion style to mainly vintage brown earthy colors, and she did that too. I eventually moved to blue, and she did it as well. It wasn't just about fashion. It extended to my nails. Whether I had nail color or not, she mimicked me. It was very creepy. Felt as if she stole my entire personality. It's the worst thing ever to have a friend without their own personality or genuine interests, trying to imitate you and steal your partner. Story 50. My best friend from childhood, someone I have known since we were young, told me that she had many best friends. We have been going in different directions for a while. She was dealing with a completely different set of home life problems than I was, but that felt low. I ended our friendship after that. I did not need that kind of negativity in my life. Story 51. The individual was arrogant and couldn't go 5 minutes without complaining about various issues. Whenever my friend and I had girlfriends, he would spend his time complaining about them taking up our time or texting them, and he would frequently use derogatory language. He constantly complained about the unfairness of us having girlfriends while he did not. He showed no accountability when he put us in dangerous and potentially illegal situations. His behavior was extremely selfish, and he betrayed us to save himself. Story 52. Constantly sarcastic, always making jokes at my expense and gaslighting me. He also tried to act like I owed him something for the good things he did in the friendship. When I finally confronted him about the gaslighting, he claimed I was too sensitive. There was no accountability, and I believe there was some jealousy involved as well. He was unattractive and didn't get many opportunities with women. I literally saw women wince, pull their heads back, and laugh at him, which I never made fun of him for. He had issues with alcohol and drugs, identified as bisexual, was still living at home at 28 years old, and made a joke about my deceased brother. He also tried to remind me that he consoled me when my mother died. He was a real weirdo who was very upset that his mom was the only woman calling him handsome. Story 53. I met someone online and we became good friends for about 4 years. I met up in person with my boyfriend and we all went to a club. My friend invited us to the dance floor, but my boyfriend didn't want to dance. She walked up to him and slapped him across the face. I never spoke to her again. She was unpredictable. Story 54. She made me fear for my safety and assaulted me. If I tried to refuse anything she requested, she would threaten to harm herself. Story 55. He was like a brother to me. I helped him set up a business even though I was disabled. I wanted him to succeed, and throughout it all, he said he would help me and make sure I was taken care of. I found him a shop and my mother invested in it. He started getting more business, but my cars that needed work kept getting pushed further back, even though I was still helping him for free. Then he cheated on his wife with someone his daughter's age, stopped talking to me and my mother entirely, never paid the loan, and spread rumors that I was sleeping with his wife. A large portion of the car community around here stopped talking to me because of it. Story 56. Addicted to cocaine, she acted incredibly sweet and seemed like she could relate to me well. Later, I found out she was exaggerating to get closer to me because she had feelings for me. She knew I would never use cocaine because I didn't like heavier substances and, at the time, only liked psychedelics and marijuana, but she still tried to pressure me into trying cocaine. I never tried it because I am incredibly stubborn, and if I don't want to use a substance, I am not going to use it no matter how many times you beg or try to wave it in my face. We had a small friend group, and they all used cocaine regularly except for me. When we all hung out, she would always get really touchy with me, and one time it got to the point where one of the friends yelled at her to back off because she wasn't listening to me. She was in an open relationship at the time but would sleep with older men multiple times a week without telling her partner. They eventually broke up, and her ex is now one of my best friends. Later, my friend group went camping, and one of the friends tried to assault me in his car. I literally tucked and rolled out of the car. He leaned out and yelled her name and mine, saying I wouldn't sleep with him. She then jumped into his car, and they drove off for about 3 hours. After we got home, I told her what happened, and she acted supportive and cut him off. But a few months later, after I had cut her and the rest of that group off, she was hanging out with him again. I also found out later that she had become extremely physically abusive to her most recent partner. I saw pictures of the scratches and bruises. I have no idea where she is now, but she is probably still engaged in the same behavior. Story 57. Constantly putting me down and belittling me for a girl she wanted to be friends with. We are in the same class at university. Story 58. My ex-best friend of nearly 20 years turned out to be a groomer. I really didn't see it until the whole James Charles scandal blew up. Then I did some quick math and realized my friend was talking to 15 and 16-year-old boys when he was 21. I also realized he was a groomer after he tried to convince a straight man to fall for him while I was staying with him. I then understood this was the exact same situation he created with his male best friend when they were both 14. I literally couldn't look at this person the same way if I tried. Story 59. I had a friend who abused women physically at first, so I shouted and cursed. Thankfully, she got away. His next girlfriend wasn't physically abused but was mentally. I've seen what a controlling person looks like, and it's disgusting. I told him he was being unreasonable, and he calmed down for a bit. The second girlfriend did leave, thankfully, but I don't know what is going on now. We are no longer friends because right after my grandmother passed, he called me, got into an argument, and ended it by saying what a disappointment I was to my recently deceased grandma. It was one of the few times I had threatened violence. Story 60. He was a housemate and friend at the time. Here are a few highlights. He constantly left half-finished coffee cups lying around, everywhere. Outside on the wall, in the garden, all over the house. My brother's girlfriend came to visit him, but he wasn't there. My friend answered the door and ended up sleeping with her in my car. When he got angry, he would become really petty. He bumped his shoulder against me when we passed in the hallway. But the most vindictive thing he did was when he was upset with me. He wore socks for a whole week, then pegged them to a pedestal fan in my bedroom and left it running. The smell was unbearable. Story 61. She brought friends who were addicted to ketamine and meth to my house around my child. She did not see anything wrong with it. She told me she nearly drowned in the bathtub, thinking she was a dolphin. I cut contact. Story 62. Selfish and inconsiderate more often than not. The friendship faded, and I definitely don't miss it. I may miss the good times, but not the complications. I have less stressful friends now, which is nice. Story 63. My former best friend of over 15 years turned out to be severely mentally ill, and I didn't know until we went on a vacation together for the first time. We had never spent more than 2 nights together before, and I don't know what happened, but she became a completely different person about 4 days in. By the time the 10 days were over, I didn't even recognize her. After we came back, our friendship slowly fell apart. Fast forward 10 years. The once beautiful model, college-educated and sophisticated woman is now a 90-pound drug addict with no teeth. She has 3 children by 3 different men, all of whom have been taken from her care. To this day, I wonder what happened during that vacation. Was she hiding her medication from me all those years and didn't take it while we were away? Did her condition just begin that week? I still care deeply for her and worry about her. I miss the friendship we had, and this experience makes me sad and unable to form new friendships. We have connected a few times since then and even went for lunch once a few years ago. But she is not the person I once knew. Story 64. He was pretty cool and relaxed for the first year of our friendship, but over time he became more judgmental and condescending, especially when I was going through depressive states. About a year ago, I reached my limit with him. In the midst of a mental breakdown, I made a post that was vaguely threatening in a broad sense. I won't specify what I posted, but it had some manifesto vibes to it. I look back on that moment and regret posting it. What did he do? He called the police on me. Anyone who has known me for as long as he has should have realized that I often say a lot of outlandish things, especially when my mental health is at rock bottom, but I would never act on them because of my morality and also because I am too scared to do so. Regardless, he called the police on me, and I almost got arrested for it. I was fortunate to be let off with a warning, but that significantly disrupted my social life for months. When I confronted him about reporting me, he said, "Well, I was just trying to help." At that point, I decided enough was enough, and I have moved on since then. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.